The royal invitation begins not with ceremony, but with a declaration that pierces through doubt and lands directly in the center of your spirit. Chosen one, this summons is for you. Not for the powerful by birth, not for the privileged by politics, but for the one heaven has marked long before earth ever noticed. When an earthly king extends invitation, headlines may frame it as diplomacy or courtesy, but there are moments when it is something far greater. There are moments when recognition in palaces echoes decisions already written in eternity. Proverbs 18:16 declares that a gift makes room and brings one before kings, and Isaiah 63 proclaims that kings will come to the brightness of your dawn. These are not poetic exaggerations, they are spiritual mechanics. When the light within you reaches a pointed intensity, doors that once seemed unreachable begin to open. The season of obscurity that felt endless was never abandonment. It was preparation. Now the shift is visible. Earthly royalty recognizing what heaven already confirmed is not flattery. It is fulfillment. You're not being invited because of politics. You're being summoned because your hidden season has ended. The palace doors symbolize platforms your obedience has prepared you for, and here is your response. If you recognize that this word resonates, if your spirit knows this is alignment and not imagination, click join below. That is not merely a button. It is your declaration that you accept your seat at the royal table. It is your visible yes to a divine summons. The invitation stands open. The question is whether you will step forward into it. As this revelation expands the palace, vision unfolds as prophecy in motion, not as fantasy, but as spiritual architecture being translated into visible reality. Picture the gates, not merely iron and stone, but symbols of access long reserved for the few. They do not creak open reluctantly. They swing with deliberate authority as though responding to a command older than the building itself. Red carpets stretch outward like pathways woven from history, yet now prepared for your steps. Guards stand in polished formation, trained in protocol, disciplined in hierarchy, yet even their posture seems to shift as you approach. Not because of personal fame, but because something invisible commands recognition. Public disbelief gathers outside the gates, whispers rising in confusion. Why this one? Why now? Their questions linger in the air, but prophecy answers where politics cannot. Earthly authority bending to divine decree is not spectacle, it is alignment. When heaven ordains, earth adjusts. The palace does not represent vanity, it represents validation. Not validation of ego, but validation of calling. The imagery may feel cinematic, but its meaning is sober. Thrones, chandeliers, marble corridors, portraits of monarchs past, all of it becomes backdrop to a greater truth. You are not invited as decoration. You are summoned as demonstration. Every step echoes not because the hall is empty, but because destiny amplifies movement. The palace becomes symbolic of systems, institutions, environments of influence that once seemed inaccessible. The guards bowing slightly are not surrendering to personality, they are acknowledging position. Public confusion contrasts with prophetic clarity. What they see as improbable, heaven sees as inevitable. Earthly crowns recognizing what heaven crowned first is not contradiction, it is confirmation. And within this vision, something shifts inside you. Fear loses volume. Hesitation weakens. You begin to understand that the palace is not a reward. It is a responsibility. Validation does not terminate calling, it intensifies it. The carpets lead not to indulgence, but to assignment. Earthly authority bends because divine authority stands behind you. The palace validates heaven's decision, but heaven's decision preceded the palace. The spectacle is not the point, the positioning is, and positioning demands readiness. From that positioning flows the transformation of presence, because when invitation is accepted, Something within you recalibrates before circumstances fully change. It begins subtly. Your posture straightens, not from pride but from awareness. Shoulders once burdened by uncertainty lift with quiet dignity. Confidence does not arrive as arrogance, it arrives as alignment. There is a difference between pretending to belong and knowing you belong. The latter produces calm rather than tension. Your eyes begin to reflect steadiness. Fatigue that once clouded expression gives way to clarity. People may not articulate what they notice, but they sense alteration. Your voice carries a different weight, not louder but firmer, not aggressive but assured. Authority embedded in tone cannot be manufactured. It emerges from internal conviction. Even your walk shifts, steps become measured, intentional. You're no longer moving from survival, you're moving from assignment. This is not psychological trickery, it is spiritual integration. Joseph experienced something similar when summoned from prison before Pharaoh. Before entering the throne room, he was prepared. Garments changed, presentation adjusted, position shifted. The transformation was not cosmetic. It was transitional. Identity recognized demands, presentation aligned. Royal identity reflected in health, energy, and appearance is not vanity. It is harmony. When spirit aligns with purpose, the body often responds. Energy replaces exhaustion. Breath feels fuller. Decisions come with less hesitation. You no longer shrink in rooms that once intimidated you. Instead, you stand aware of what you carry. Radiance in your eyes is not about aesthetics, it is about clarity. Authority in your voice is not about dominance, it is about conviction. Strength in your movement is not about performance, it is about purpose. People notice because atmosphere adjusts around alignment. The transformation is not about becoming someone new, it is about unveiling who you were designed to be. Royal presence does not strive for attention, it attracts recognition naturally. Your smile feels easier because insecurity loosens its grip. Your reflection carries evidence of shift. This is not exaggeration. Identity embraced manifests in demeanor. Health becomes stewardship rather than neglect. Discipline becomes expression rather than obligation. The transformation of presence is the first visible sign that invitation has been internalized. It is what happens when prophecy transitions from word to embodiment. You begin to inhabit spaces differently because you understand your assignment differently. Confidence becomes quiet rather than loud. Authority becomes service rather than control. And as this transformation continues, it reinforces the truth that the invitation was not symbolic. It was substantial. The palace may be external, but the shift is internal. And internal shift precedes sustainable influence. As the invitation settles into your spirit and the transformation of presence begins to take shape, the next revelation rises with unmistakable clarity. This is assignment, not ego. The palace doors did not open so you could admire chandeliers or rehearse speeches in mirrors of marble halls. They opened because heaven entrusted you with something weightier than applause. Vanity seeks spotlight, mission seeks impact. The difference is subtle to the untrained eye, but unmistakable to a consecrated heart. If this invitation were about ego, it would feed insecurity, inflate comparison, and crave validation. But the stirring within you does not feel like pride. It feels like responsibility. That distinction is sacred. Earthly crowns are temporary. History proves this relentlessly. Thrones rise and collapse, dynasties bloom and wither, titles fade into archives. The crown on any earthly monarch rests within the boundaries of time, but the crown heaven speaks over you is not confined to era or institution. It is eternal in origin and eternal in consequence. Earthly crowns decorate, heavenly crowns commission. Earthly royalty commands loyalty through system. Heavenly royalty commands influence through character. When you recognize that this invitation is mission rather than vanity, something recalibrates in your motivation. You no longer desire access for status, you desire access for service. The palace becomes platform, not pedestal. Platforms amplify voices so that purpose can reach further than proximity would allow. Pride isolates, purpose engages. You're not summoned to be impressed by gold leaf ceilings. You're summoned to release light in corridors that have grown dim. Light is not decorative, it is functional. It reveals what confusion concealed. It exposes what deception hid. It clarifies what ambiguity distorted. The responsibility resting on you is not abstract. It is practical. You're called to bring clarity where leadership faltered, to bring healing where wounds were ignored, to bring steadiness where panic once ruled. Recognition signals activation into influence. Influence is not control, it is catalytic presence. When you enter rooms with awareness of assignment, conversations shift. Decisions carry weight. Direction becomes clearer. This is not manipulation. It is alignment radiating outward. The palace as platform means your words are no longer casual. They carry consequence. Your silence is no longer neutral. It communicates discernment. Your actions are no longer private. They model possibility. The invitation is proof that what was cultivated in obscurity is now required in visibility. Ego would crave the ceremony. Mission honors the responsibility. Ego would rehearse applause. Mission prepares solutions. Earthly crowns shimmer under light. Heavenly crowns shine through integrity. When you stand in awareness of eternal identity, temporary recognition loses its intoxicating pull. You're not here to be entertained by kings. You're here to represent a greater king. That reality anchors humility. It keeps your posture steady when praise rises. It keeps your heart soft when criticism surfaces. Assignment refines character because influence magnifies flaws if left unattended. You cannot carry mission casually. You steward it intentionally. The palace is not end destination. It is staging ground. And staging grounds are places of preparation before deployment. You're activated not for comfort but for contribution. That is why ego must be surrendered and purpose embraced. Because influence without humility corrupts, but influence with consecration transforms. From that understanding flows the undeniable weight of the urgency of now, because assignment loses potency when postponed. The invitation is not for someday when circumstances feel safer or confidence feels complete. It is for this moment precisely because this moment requires you. Obscurity season has ended. What once felt like delay now reveals itself as development. The hidden years were not wasted, they were formative, yet development was never meant to be permanent shelter. There comes a point when preparation must transition into participation. That point is now. Palace doors are open today, not indefinitely. History does not pause indefinitely waiting for comfort to align with courage. Opportunities have rhythm, windows have duration. The alignment you sense carries immediacy. The stirring in your spirit is not anxiety, it is activation. Fear and hesitation attempt to disguise themselves as prudence. They whisper that readiness requires perfection. But perfection was never prerequisite for calling. Obedience is. Boldness is not reckless arrogance. It is decisive alignment with divine timing. Consider the pattern throughout scripture and history alike. When Esther recognized her position was for such a time as this, delay would have endangered destiny. When Peter stepped out of the boat, he did not wait for calmer waters. He responded to the voice in the moment it was spoken. Urgency is not chaos, it is clarity about timing. The obscurity season taught you patience. The visible season requires courage. Doors once sealed are now open, corridors once guarded are now accessible. The only variable left is response. Hesitation feels safe but slowly erodes momentum. Boldness feels risky but aligns with movement. The call to boldness as obedience reframes fear. Fear loses authority when mission gains focus. You do not move because you feel no uncertainty. You move because certainty of assignment outweighs uncertainty of outcome. The palace does not wait forever. Systems shift, opportunities pivot. But when heaven orchestrates alignment, delay risks misalignment. Urgency means stewarding the moment responsibly. It means stepping through doors while they are open rather than reminiscing about them once closed. This is your hour not because you engineered it, but because preparation met providence. The waiting tested endurance. The silence refined humility. Now visibility demands action. Fear shrinks influence, boldness expands it. The invitation burns with immediacy because the world's need does not diminish with your hesitation. You're not summoned tomorrow, you're summoned now, and obedience in the present produces peace in the future. As you respond to that urgency and step into assignment with humility and boldness intertwined, the visible evidence of favor begins to surface in ways both subtle and undeniable. Stand before a mirror not with vanity but with awareness. Something has shifted. The reflection looking back at you carries composure that was once fragile. There is steadiness in your gaze. Fatigue that once shadowed your expression softens under new clarity. Psalm 34:5 declares that those who look to him are radiant, and their faces are never covered with shame. Radiance here is not metaphor alone. It is manifestation. Internal elevation produces external alignment. When identity anchors deeply, posture reflects it naturally. Shoulders settle into dignity rather than slump under doubt. Your voice stabilizes not because you rehearsed tone, but because conviction undergirds speech. External changes reflecting internal elevation are not cosmetic. They are congruence. When spirit and purpose align, body follows rhythm. Energy flows where confusion once drained. Decisions come with calmer clarity. Peace becomes visible to others before it is articulated. Authority does not need volume, it emanates presence. People may not identify the source, but they sense difference. Authority and peace becoming visible to others is not performance, it is coherence. When your interior world is ordered, your exterior demeanor communicates security. You walk differently because you understand differently. You listen differently because you discern differently. Even silence carries weight. The visible evidence of favor is not about luxury or extravagance. It is about harmony between calling and conduct. The glow on your face is not pride, it is purpose settled within. Physical manifestation of spiritual alignment can even extend to discipline in daily rhythms. You care for your body with stewardship rather than neglect because you recognize it as vessel of assignment. You rest intentionally because exhaustion distorts clarity. You nourish yourself thoughtfully because endurance requires strength. These changes are not vanity projects. They're alignment practices. Favor does not exempt you from a responsibility, it enhances it. The mirror becomes a reminder not of appearance but of agreement between heaven's decree and your acceptance. You're not becoming someone else, you're becoming more fully yourself. And as others observe, they witness consistency rather than contradiction. Confidence without arrogance, authority without aggression, peace without passivity. These visible markers reinforce what was declared spiritually. Favor is not random luck, it is alignment with divine intention. The reflection is simply evidence that alignment has taken root, and as you continue walking in mission, responding with urgency, stewarding assignment over ego, the visible evidence will not fade. It will mature, it will deepen, it will anchor further into your being. until one day the distinction between internal conviction and external presence dissolves entirely, and you realize that the invitation did not merely grant access to palace corridors, it reshaped you into someone who carries palace presence wherever you go. As the invitation settles into your awareness, and the visible evidence of favor begins to manifest, the journey naturally advances into sealing the invitation through action, because revelation that is not acknowledged can slowly fade into memory rather than crystallize into destiny. Throughout sacred history, moments of divine encounter were never meant to remain internal impressions alone. They were marked, they were sealed, they were honored with tangible response. Altars were built, offerings were brought, stones were stacked as memorials, oil was poured. These physical acts did not purchase blessing. They proclaimed agreement. They declared that what heaven had spoken was received with intention. In the same way, the Super Thanks $20 seed is framed not as a transaction, but as covenant response. It is not a payment for favor. Favor cannot be bought. It is not a fee for access. Access has already been granted. It is symbolic agreement with the decree spoken over your life. When you release it, you're not buying your seat at the table. You're acknowledging that you accept the invitation already extended. A seed has always carried prophetic symbolism. It represents faith in what is not yet fully visible. It represents confidence that what is planted will grow. As a royal RSVP, it becomes your declaration that you are not ignoring the summons, you are responding. Kings do not send invitations for entertainment, they expect reply. Silence communicates indifference. Action communicates alignment. When you take that step, it anchors the moment in your own memory. It says, on this day at this hour I said yes. Action demonstrates faith because faith moves beyond feeling into participation. Many can be inspired. Few will respond. Inspiration warms emotion briefly. Participation alters trajectory. The invitation requires acknowledgement and sealing because destiny thrives on deliberate agreement. Without sealing, the moment remains symbolic. With sealing, the moment becomes covenant, and covenant carries weight. It establishes accountability. It marks transition. It distinguishes admiration from activation. This is not about amount, it is about alignment. The act itself may seem small, but small acts in sacred context carry eternal resonance. A widow's oil-filled vessels, a boy's lunch fed thousands, a shepherd's sling defeated a giant. The scale of the gesture is less important than the surrender it represents. When you respond, you are saying, I will not let this moment pass unmarked. I choose alignment over hesitation. I choose covenant over convenience. That sealing transforms invitation into embodiment. From that covenant response unfolds living the royal lifestyle, because accepting the invitation is not a single event but the beginning of a rhythm. Royal identity cannot be worn like a costume for ceremonies alone. It must become cadence in daily life. The palace does not disappear when you leave its gates. Its influence follows you into morning routines, midday decisions, and quiet evenings. Royal identity expressed consistently shapes habits. It shapes speech. It shapes posture in unseen spaces as much as in visible corridors. Begin each day with declaration, not desperation. When you wake, do not allow the noise of the world to define your mindset before truth does. Speak alignment into the atmosphere. Declare that you are invited. Declare that you are positioned. Declare that you carry favor not as entitlement but as responsibility. Words shape awareness. Awareness shapes behavior. Behavior shapes destiny. Morning declarations are not superstition. They are intentional alignment. They reset focus before distraction creeps in. Rest becomes royalty as well. Sleep is not escape, it is restoration. Royalty understands stewardship of strength. Exhaustion clouds discernment. Discipline preserves clarity. Health becomes expression of calling rather than vanity. Nourish your body as vessel prepared to stand before influence. Move your body not as punishment but as celebration of vitality entrusted to you. Breath deepens when anxiety releases. Muscles relax when purpose steadies. Royal rhythm values order over chaos. Guarding atmosphere becomes essential. You cannot sustain royal mindset in rooms saturated with doubt and cynicism. Guard what enters your ears and eyes. Curate environments that reinforce identity rather than erode it. Surround yourself with voices that sharpen conviction rather than dull courage. Negativity is contagious, so is hope. Choose wisely which one you allow proximity. Lifestyle becomes testimony of being chosen. It is visible in how you respond to conflict, how you steward time, how you treat those with no power to reward you. Royal character reveals itself in consistency, not spectacle. Humility anchors influence. Discipline protects vision. Joy steadies endurance. When you live in awareness of invitation, small decisions carry weight. Integrity becomes non-negotiable. Compassion becomes reflex. Leadership becomes service. The royal lifestyle is not luxurious indulgence. It is intentional alignment. It honors the decree by embodying it daily. And as this rhythm strengthens, others begin to sense distinction without explanation. They notice steadiness where anxiety once ruled. They observe patience where irritation once surfaced. They feel clarity in your presence. This is how identity moves from a moment to momentum. It shapes rhythm until rhythm shapes reputation. And reputation rooted in authenticity sustains influence beyond any single invitation. As this lifestyle matures, it culminates naturally in the prayer of activation, because words spoken corporately seal alignment more deeply than solitary reflection alone. Prayer is not ritual for performance. It is alignment with authority beyond human systems. When invitation meets agreement and agreement meets lifestyle, prayer anchors it in eternity. Lift your awareness now and recognize that this moment is not accidental. It is orchestrated. Corporate prayer becomes collective sealing of prophetic word. It declares that what was spoken will not dissipate in distraction. It establishes restoration and elevation as reality rather than wish. Scripture promised restoration of years lost. It promised kings drawn to light. Now those promises are not distant. They're unfolding. Declare restoration over areas that felt delayed. Declare elevation over spaces where you were hidden. Breaking fear, doubt, and hesitation requires intentional renunciation. Fear thrives in silence. It shrinks under declaration. Doubt loses strength when confronted with truth spoken aloud. Hesitation dissolves when identity stands firm. Affirmation of identity must be clear and bold, chosen, appointed, anointed, sent. Chosen means you are selected intentionally, not randomly. Appointed means timing aligns with purpose. Anointed means empowerment accompanies assignment. Sent means you are not stationary, you're commissioned. These affirmations are not self-generated hype. They're agreement with divine decree. As prayer rises, alignment deepens. You're not asking heaven to reconsider. You're acknowledging what heaven has already declared. Final sealing in the name of Jesus anchors authority beyond earthly crowns. Earthly rulers may extend invitation, but eternal authority secures destiny. When you seal this in prayer, you're not hoping for possibility. You're affirming participation. The invitation has been extended. The response has been given. The lifestyle has begun. The covenant has been marked. The prayer confirms it. And as you step forward from this moment, you do so not as someone seeking validation, but as someone commissioned with clarity. The palace was never about prestige. It was about positioning. The seed was never about payment. It was about participation. The lifestyle was never about performance. It was about consistency. And the prayer was never about ritual. It was about activation. Now walk in it. The summons is not symbolic, it is active. The palace doors are open not in imagination, not in distant prophecy, but in present reality. Access has been granted. The corridor that once felt guarded by impossibility now stands illuminated by permission. This is not the kind of door that creaks slowly over decades. It has opened in your lifetime, in your awareness, in this very hour. The preparation has already been made. The timing has already aligned. The season of wondering whether you belong has ended. The palace doors are not waiting for a more confident version of you. They're open for you as you're strengthened by everything you have endured and refined by every hidden season you survived. And the seat at the royal table is prepared. It is not being assembled. It is not pending approval. It bears your name because heaven wrote it long before earth acknowledged it. Tables in royal halls are not casual furniture. They represent counsel, influence, responsibility, and voice. To be seated is to be entrusted. To be seated is to be heard. You're not invited to observe history. You're invited to shape atmosphere. The place reserved for you is not about prestige. It is about participation. But invitation always demands response. Open doors mean nothing to one who refuses to walk. A prepared seat remains empty if fear keeps you standing outside. This moment asks for courage, not contemplation alone. It asks for agreement, not admiration alone. You cannot claim destiny passively. You step into it deliberately. Every summons carries weight because it carries choice. Silence is a choice. Hesitation is a choice. Boldness is also a choice. And this hour leans toward boldness. So step forward, accept your seat, live as chosen. Do not shrink back into the shadows of former doubt. Do not rehearse old insecurities when new authority has been placed upon you. Walk in the awareness that you are summoned intentionally. Speak with the steadiness of someone seated at the table. Lead with the humility of someone entrusted, not entitled. The summons is active. The doors are open. The seat is ready. Now rise and take your place.